Opinions. We all have them. Some of them are correct, some of them are slightly less correct, and others are just downright crazy. Every once in a while though, you come across an opinion that sounds absurd at first, but when you think about it for just a minute, you recognize it for what it really is, the truth. And that's what we're talking about today. 5 hot takes about Apex Legends that you know are actually right. But before we get started, be sure to leave your Apex Legends hot takes in the comments below, and maybe you'll be featured in a future video. Now without further ado, let's get controversial. We're coming in hot with this first one. Now I know the Craver is everyone's go-to care package weapon, and as a sniper enjoyer myself, I understand the desire to track down the best sniper in the game and land that long-range headshot. But the Craver is not the best sniper rifle. And not only that, it kinda sucks now. I know that might sound a little bit crazy, but if you don't already understand, you will in a second. The Craver is a sniper with a long rechamber time, a long reload time, a long aim down sights time, an unintuitive projectile speed, and one of the worst optics that can never be changed. But for a long time, the weapon was still a prized pickup for one reason and one reason alone. The Craver was the only gun that could reliably one-shot every legend in the game. Eventually. There was nothing more terrifying than minding your business, holding a position you thought was safe, only for one of your teammates to be instantly knocked with one bullet. That one knock would lead to super aggressive pushes and usually a guaranteed loss as you and your remaining teammates struggled to find your bearings in what was now either a 2v3 or worse, a 2v2 with a Craver still watching from afar. The Craver single-handedly won games. And don't get me wrong, this is still possible, but it's no longer reliable because the one-tap machine is no longer guaranteed to one-tap. Enemy has a red shield, they live. Enemy has a purple helmet, they live. Your enemy is Gibraltar with a blue shield? Joke's on you, that gun shield's gonna magically absorb the headshot and they live. And by the time you rechamber the next shot, they're behind cover almost done popping a battery. Sure, the occasional one tap is still satisfying, but if you're trying to actually kill your enemies, you're better off grabbing a weapon with more consistent damage output. The Charged Sentinel does similar damage but has a faster fire rate with Deadeye's tempo. The longbow with a Skull Piercer can 2-tap most enemies, and the Charge Rifle may do less damage, but it requires none of the skill. Not to mention the actual best long-range weapon in the game, the Bowcheck. This thing is insane. If you're looking for a high-damage 2-tapping machine that'll make your enemies tremble with fear, you have to learn how to use the bow. It is both silent and deadly. All that to say, the Craver is still a fun weapon, but it's a far cry from the king of snipers it once was. This one may ruffle some feathers. I can see the comments already, but control matches are so long. I don't care about the objective, I just want to get kills. And I hear you, but there's something to consider. Aside from the movement and weapon mechanics, what is the one thing that makes the Battle Royale mode satisfying to play? I would argue part of the satisfaction comes from the progression you feel when leveling up your gear. Maybe it's just my lizard brain talking, but there's something so satisfying about getting kills and watching your armor and weapons change from blue to purple to gold, or red in the case of armor. Team Deathmatch doesn't have this, but Control does. The progression system in Control also has 2 functions outside of making the weapons change colors. It also allows you to charge your ultimate faster, and in that way sort of works like a kill streak in Call of Duty. This may sound kind of small, but the ability to get your ultimate more quickly means that a competitive game of Control can actually offer you more use of your ultimate than even a full Battle Royale match. The second function is that it creates the opportunity for comebacks when you take down tougher enemy players. If a player is doing well and levels up their weapon, but then they die, the enemy team can pick up the fully cated weapon while that player returns to blue gear, giving the enemies a better chance in the next fight. These factors work to give Control a more satisfying game loop, and as much as people may dislike the objective, providing an objective to play around and differing levels of gear makes Control much closer to the BR loop and makes it a great way to warm up. Team Deathmatch by comparison can feel a bit more random in terms of where players will show up since the spawns can be kind of wonky. TDM can also be a more miserable experience when you get a bad matchup because it feels like there's nothing you can do. A single predator on the enemy team can be absolutely overwhelming in TDM, whereas in Control, it takes at least 3 very good players to dominate the game because there are multiple points to defend and one player can't be everywhere. Team Deathmatch also doesn't have anything to go for other than kills, so if you're having a bad game and losing your 1v1s, there's no way for you to contribute to your team or feel like you're achieving anything. Sure, Control isn't perfect. They need to add a mercy rule and allow lockouts for the entire game so that last-minute comebacks are actually viable. But as it stands, Control just has a more satisfying gameplay loop than Team Deathmatch. With that said though, this one is more a matter of perspective, so let me know whether or not you agree in the comment section. The next one though is just a fact. It is high time Pathfinder and Revenant finally get Fortified, or at least some alternative passive to mitigate their massive hitboxes. I don't even really know if this is a hot take, but this is something that needs to be said because for some reason Respawn doesn't see this as a problem. In fact, Respawn is so misguided on this issue that at one point Pathfinder and Revenant were given low profile, a passive that actually made them take more damage for some reason. Now, I kind of understand the logic of this. They're lanky robot characters with wider gaps between their limbs and torso than the human characters. So early on in the game's lifetime, it made sense to let them take normal or even increased damage despite their large size because those gaps could lead to players missing shots. But here's the thing, the game's been out for 4 years, and these days most players have learned that each legend has an optimal place to aim to hit the most shots, so little quirks like Pathfinder's thigh gap don't matter anymore. If for some reason you actually didn't know this, I'll enlighten you. The basic concept is that you want to aim for center of mass. For short characters like Lifeline or Wraith, this means you want to aim near their waist since it's the widest area. For Gibraltar, if you're fighting him head on for some reason, you want to aim for his upper chest, so you have a wide target, but you can also have the possibility of headshots when his gun shield pops up. For Pathfinder, you want to aim at the giant screen on his chest. And for Revenant, you can honestly aim anywhere. You literally can't miss him. Point is, what matters isn't the shape of the target, it's the size. And Pathfinder and Revenant are both huge, big enough in my opinion to justify the application of Fortified. But if you wanted to avoid giving them the full tank passive, you could also just give them a passive unique to robots that only provides one of the Fortified perks, meaning they could either take reduced damage or just not receive the bullets slow. And if it's only one, you could even throw it onto Ashe, that way you can make her more appealing without power creeping her too much. Just throwing that idea out there, but the point is that Pathfinder and Revenant have been way too big for way too long, and an added passive could probably help that. This one is yet another fact, but nostalgia is a powerful drug. For a long time, Season 3 has been held up as the perfect season of Apex Legends. The game was still riding the high of its first year, we had received a beautiful new map, and everything still felt shiny and new. So of course, when we look back, those memories paint an image of sunshine and rainbows. But let's take a more objective look, shall we? Season 3 did bring us a new map, but it became the only one available for play. And while in my opinion World's Edge was great, for players that loved King's Canyon, it was a fat middle finger. Season 3 also brought us the original charge rifle with all of its toxicity. If you weren't around for the 90 damage shots from 400 meters away and a 7-round magazine, you truly dodged a bullet. Laser beam. This was also the season when they introduced weapon charms. You know, those things that clutter up the extra menu and take up the space of larger cosmetics in the battle pass. Granted, Season 3 did bring us Fight or Fright, Winter Express, and a handful of interesting modes in the Grand Soiree event. But when you compare the content available now versus what we had back then, I think it's hard to argue that current Apex is worse. This season, we have the 3 best maps available on a rotation, there's a mixtape playlist with more limited time modes on the way, 24 legends to choose from, a weapon prestige system with free rewards and skins, and we finally have the new class passive that was leaked all those years ago. There's so much more to do in Apex now than there was back in Season 3. But there is one elephant in the room that I haven't talked about yet, the skill-based matchmaking. Everyone always says that skill-based matchmaking didn't exist back then. There are 2 problems with this statement though. First of all, it's actually false. Apex Legends has always had skill-based matchmaking as confirmed by the developers. Sure, it's possible that around Season 3 is when they made changes that made matchmaking more sweaty, but I'm gonna make a more logical argument. We were all just worse at the game back then. And you might think that that's wrong, because if it's just an increase in player skill, then why did it happen so fast? Why did the game just suddenly become harder in Season 4? Well, here's what you may not have realized. Season 3 came to a close at the end of January 2020. Do you know what else happened at the end of January 2020? The inaugural season of ALGS, the Apex Legends Global Series. Players from around the world tuned in to watch actual professionals play Apex Legends. And whereas previously the meta and playstyle had been determined naturally based on the YouTube and Twitch scenes, now the metagame around Apex had expanded to include a whole new glossary of skills and strategies. The knowledge from pro players then trickled down and started to slowly change the mindset of even the average casual player. That accelerated the skill progression of Apex Legends dramatically. I would argue that there were always 3 stacks in your lobbies, and I know that because I was one of them. But once ALGS started, those 3 stacks wanted to try out the cool strats and movement that had trickled down to them. If for some reason you still don't believe me, I challenge you to go back and watch a few videos from your favorite Apex content creator in Season 3, and then watch a few from Season 4, and note the difference in how often they holster their weapons, how often do they wall jump, where are they aiming at their enemies, how often are they using cover to jiggle peek in fights, how much more are they third partying now. I guarantee that you'll see a difference. Anyway, we're kind of getting off topic here. The point is that Season 17 is better than Season 3, and every matchmaking complaint you have now would be just as bad, if not worse, if you took players with today's skill and put them in the game back then. But if you still think you have a legit reason why Season 3 is better, feel free to let me know. And while I'm making people hate me, I might as well go ahead and say this one: Apex Legends is a better game than Titanfall 2. Now, before my fellow Titanfall lovers reach for their pitchforks, let me clarify what I mean by that. I'm not saying that Apex is more fun than Titanfall 2. Fun is subjective and everyone has their own preference. But what I am saying is that as a product, I do think Apex Legends is better. There's more depth, the game has more variety than Titanfall did, and even if you disagree with all of this, I think it's objectively clear that Apex Legends has more staying power than Titanfall 2 did. Every time this topic comes up, people who love Titanfall 2 will always say it's EA's fault because they released Titanfall 2 between Battlefield and Call of Duty. They cannibalized their own product. And while that might have explained the low sales at release, it doesn't explain why even after the game was made available for free and numbers temporarily soared, they almost immediately came crashing down. That sort of problem implies that the issue was not with the release window at all, but with the game itself. Mind you, I think the gameplay of Titanfall 2 is exceptional, but where it fell off was in its content release schedule. The real problem with Titanfall 2 is that Respawn was competing in a live service industry but didn't realize it. And to make it worse, they had no live service experience. Apex Legends, on the other hand, was created with the live service model in mind. Not only was the gameplay loop fun and satisfying, but the promise of quality content and the gradual improvement of that content earned Apex an audience that not only stuck around, but also continued to grow and even surpassed its initial peak over 2 years later. But with that in mind, I would argue that a Titanfall 3 could be better than even Apex Legends. The game could make better use of lore than Apex since it would have its own story, and it could also use some of the lessons from Apex to create content released at more regular intervals to maintain and grow interest in the game. Titanfall is almost universally praised for its mechanics already. So if they could keep that part intact while also nailing the content aspect of the game, I could see Titanfall 3 far surpassing the initial Titanfall games and also remaining relevant. After all, I'm still waiting for an Ice Titan to go toe-to-toe with Scorch. Fingers crossed that EA hasn't completely given up on the Titanfall series at this point. Anyway, that's the last one for this video, but there are tons of hot takes where these came from. So let me know if you're interested in more and be sure to leave your own hot takes in the comments below. Also remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.